Hi, Shepherd's Pie. Greetings from the Philippines. Welcome back to the garden for a coffee and a chat. I don't think it'll be a long video today. Just want to get a couple of things off my chest because a few things have bothered me the last couple of weeks. This is not going to be a negative video. This is not going to be a positive video. It's going to be an honest video about the real reasons people move to the Philippines. Because in my mind there are three reasons that people move to the Philippines. Why does this matter? Well, it matters because over the last few weeks I've had a few comments in the video saying I am living the dream, and I don't think I am, and I don't want to give people the impression I am. Don't get me wrong, I'm leading a good life in the Philippines and I'm happy in the Philippines, but I don't think I'm living the dream, and I don't think there are that many people who are living the dream who would consider themselves to be living the dream in the Philippines. There will be some, of course, and if they are, then power to them, but I don't think there are that many people, expats, who live here, or certainly Filipinos, that if you ask them honestly, who would believe they are living in paradise. It's a great place to live in many aspects, but it's also a challenging place to live. And I think you need to explore the three reasons why people move to the Philippines to understand why some people, not all, but some people will give misleading information about the Philippines, will paint it out to be paradise, and why some people will be incredibly negative about the Philippines. Because I think it stems to the reasons why they came here in the first place. Now, I will hit you with a disclaimer now. I don't really fall into the three categories I'm about to talk about, and a lot of you won't. And if you don't fall into those categories, I understand. I'm generalising, of course I'm generalising, but I do think I'm talking about the vast majority of people who move here. Now, what are the three reasons, and why do they not apply to me? Well, they don't apply to me because, let's go through the three reasons first. What are they? Well, the first one is English. You know, they speak English here, and that seems to be a big thing to a lot of people who want to move here. You know, they will constantly say in the comments and things, and you'll meet people, they came here because the people here speak English. I've had a couple of friends I know over in Siquijor. I've been telling them how great when I was living in Siquijor. I was telling them, you know, how great Thailand was. They said, yeah, it sounds great, but I'd struggle with the language. And it's a fair point. It is a fair point. You know, some people find the idea of going to a country where you would have to learn the language daunting. I understand that, I respect that. I say that doesn't apply to me because I quite like the challenge of trying to learn new languages and things. You know, one of the things I find a bit boring about the Philippines, they do speak English. But a word of warning, they speak English to a certain level. I have had more misunderstandings, I think, in my short time here than I ever did in Thailand or ever did in Cambodia, because you think because you're talking English they understand you, so you let it go. You think they've understood you. Now, in countries where you don't speak the same language, I think you put more effort into the sign language and you're repeating yourself, etc., to be understood. But, you know, you may well say it's my accent, I am the reason why they haven't understood me. All fine, but, you know, you might be right. But there are times when I've been out with Americans and they've spoken in English, and, you know, the staff, they don't understand you. But Filipinos will just smile and, you know, they either don't want to show that they don't understand you or they think that they do. But I tell you, there are a lot of misunderstandings. A lot of time the wrong food comes. A lot of time you order drinks, they're not the right drinks. You know, you'll get misleading information about ferry times, and you know, but it's just the way it is. You know, it's more fun in the Philippines. That's not a problem. I'm just saying to you, if you are going to move here and think it's going to be a breeze because everyone speaks English, it's possibly not going to be as easy as you think it is in that sense. But fine, you know, English is an advantage to a lot of people that move here. It's a reason why they move here. The other one is cost of living. Now, it amazes me because I've had a few comments in the videos the last few weeks arguing that certain countries are cheaper and the Philippines isn't that cheap, etc. It's a cheap country to live in. I mean, that's, to me, that's indisputable. If you look on, you know, country cost of living indexes and things like that, the Philippines is something like the 23rd cheapest country in the world to live, 38th cheapest country in the world to live in. Which again, I didn't come here for the cost of living, because the cost of living is more or less the same as Thailand, more or less the same as Cambodia. So it was no cheaper for me to come to the Philippines. You know, I wasn't coming here to save money. It's probably worked out for me in the Philippines. It is slightly more expensive than Cambodia. When I was living in Jomtien, my living costs were much higher than here. When I was living in the mountains in Thailand, my living costs were lower than here. So, you know, it swings and roundabouts. There's only a few $100s in it. But it's a cheap place. I mean, people will argue, as I say, I had a debate with well, it's fine if you want to, you know, you've got your views, you put them in the comments. People were trying to tell me that Spain is cheaper and a higher standard of living. Well, in terms of the higher standard of living, well, it really depends on what your budget is here. I mean, you could have a comparable standard of living depending where you lived in the Philippines. Maybe it would cost you more, but what are we comparing here? It will cost more to live in Manila, no doubt, in a nice place there, than it will to live in a small town or village in an industrial part of Spain. But it will cost you more to live in a very nice place in Madrid or in Barcelona than it will in Manila. To me, that's indisputable. You may find a cheap place, you know, a cheap town or whatever, you know, in the mountains or whatever, in a less touristy place in Spain, which is cheaper than Manila, but it's not going to be cheaper than living in the provinces in the Philippines. To me, that's indisputable. I mean, alcohol prices, just look at the price of a beer or whatever here. Going out for meals in a decent standard restaurant, considerably cheaper than it is in Spain. House rental prices, considerably cheaper than it is in Spain. You know, trikes, you can get a trike for like 2 kilometres here for 15 pesos. They've got jeepneys. I mean, I don't use them because I've got a scooter, but jeepneys, you can go like 10 kilometres for 20 pesos. You know, it's a strange argument. People will say that healthcare is cheaper in Spain because it's free. Well, it's free in virtually every European country. It's free in the UK, you know, but that's not really a cost I factor in, because how often do I use it? I have been here a year, well, 14, 15 months now. I've never been to a hospital or a doctor, so I'm not going to count that in my living costs. Obviously, if you get sick over here and you've got like a chronic illness or whatever, and you're constantly having to go to the hospital, then yeah, you'd have to factor that in. You'd have to consider, is it cheaper to live in your home country where you get free healthcare? Might be you live in the States, somewhere like that, where you don't get free healthcare. Here's the cheaper option. But to me, you know, I find it strange that, you know, people will argue that this is an expensive place. It is a cheap place. It is expensive in certain things. Certain things are surprising. You know, your root vegetables and meat and things like that aren't so cheap. You know, a lot of people think they'll come here and cook their own food at home, well, and save money that way. I don't know you will save that much. Obviously, if you grow your own vegetables, you might save a bit, but it's expensive in a way, but not as expensive as some countries. I mean, Japan, place like that, you know, your vegetables, fruit are going to cost you a hell of a lot more. But It's undeniable to me, and a silly argument, no offence to anyone, to say that the Philippines isn't a cheap place to live. I mean, I'm living on, I say, my budget average month is between 1,000 and 15,000 pesos a month. I couldn't live on that in a European country. Not and have a good standard of living. You know, I mean, you could live on it, you could survive on it in, I suppose, anywhere really, but would you have a good standard of living? You certainly couldn't go out for meals every night like I do here, or virtually every night in Spain, and not have a significantly higher budget than here. Now, I've got nothing against Spain. You know, it's not the place for me. If it's the place for you, fine. You know, I just find Asia more exciting. I like to get away from European places. I've travelled a lot through Europe. I find them, you know, it's more exciting for me to be in vastly different cultures, shall we say, you know. But there you go. I'm just saying, you know, it is a cheap country in relation to the vast majority of countries in the world. And a lot of people come here because they want cheap living. Why do they want cheap living? Well, some people seem to enjoy cheap living. They have money, but they like to live frugally. Some people just don't have any money, you know. All I will say on the money, as a word of warning to you, we live quite cheaply here, but it's not a conscious decision. You know, it's just living is cheap here. You know, as I've said many times in the videos, I don't want to be repetitive. We could spend significantly more if we had to. If there were restaurants I found that I really enjoyed that cost a lot more, we'd go to those restaurants. You know what I mean? Our costs are just what they are. Now, why am I saying that? I'm saying that because it's important. Because if I had to live on 1,000 pesos a month, sorry, $1,000 a month, or even if I had to live on $1,500 a month, that would be very different, because that affects you psychologically, I would imagine. You know, it's one thing saying, I've done everything that I wanted to do this month and our living cost came to $1,000, because that's what they came to only having $1,000. Because then you would have to constantly be thinking, can I afford to do this? Can I go here? Can I do that? What if I do that? Now, I would not want to live like that. So be aware of that. If you're coming here on a very limited budget, it might not be as much fun if you're constantly having to count, can I do this, can I do that, or I've done this, I can't, you know, whatever. But equally, if you're struggling to make ends meet in, I don't know, America or somewhere like that, you know, and you're leading a boring life and can never go out and you've got the money, then you've already got that problem. So, I mean, come here and I doubt the problem will be as much. But, you know, anyway, this is not a cost of living video. This is just, you know, I'm saying that is why people come here. A lot of people, because the living costs are cheaper, you know. And to me, it's a cheap country, you know. There you go. Compare it to Pakistan, it's probably not such a cheap country. Compare it to Sri Lanka, it's possibly an expensive country. But I don't want to live in those countries. And I don't want to live in any European country. But there you go, that's just me. Now, the main reason people come here can't speak. And this is the important one. The women. Of course it is. Of course it is. You know, that's why a vast majority of men come to the Philippines is for the women. Now, they might not say that in a lot of the vlogs, but it's a reality. I mean, it's common sense, you see it. In Thailand, the last couple of years I was there, you increasingly got couples moving over there, Western couples. Moving there because it's a great country, moving there because the cost of living is cheap. I don't know, I didn't talk to many of them, but it was a thing. There were lots of Western, increasingly each year, more and more Western couples were retiring in Thailand. And it's a great place to live. You don't see that here, or not so many. You might do in, I don't know, Manila or Cebu, but the majority of guys that come here are single guys. And why do they come here? They come here for the women. You know, let's be honest about this. because it's important for a couple of reasons. And there is nothing wrong with coming here for the women. Nothing wrong at all. You know, again, not why I came here, because I came from Thailand. It's very easy to get women in Thailand. Not quite so easy in Cambodia, but still relatively easy. You know, there is no reason to move from Thailand to the Philippines for women, because, you know, it's not an issue. So, and there will be a lot of expats here who haven't moved. I mean, there are some very wealthy expats here who the living costs will not have been a consideration to them. English probably was, and women won't be a consideration for them. They just like living in the Philippines. You know, power to you if that's you, and I can relate to that. But for the vast majority, it is women, because it's easy here to find Western guys. It's a lot easier than it is to find women in the majority of Western countries. So a lot of the people that come here will come here to look for women. Some will want to be promiscuous. I know a couple, but not so many. The majority seem to be lonely souls who come here looking for a life partner, and there's nothing wrong with that. If they find what they're looking for and the woman finds the man of her dreams, then, you know, great, happy for you, wonderful that it worked out. But why is it significant? It's significant because a lot of people won't admit it. A lot of people will turn around and say things like, you know, on the vlogs, oh, it's paradise and it's wonderful and it's all this. I say to some people it is. There seems to be an increasing number of people who come to the Philippines who want to live off grid, want to grow their own crops and that, live up, you know, in a province somewhere. You know, perfect place for that. I think Thailand might be a bit better in the terms of the sense you've got your typhoons and things to contend here with. But yeah, that's what floats some people's boat. And if you do, great place for that if you're going to, you know, start a small holding or a little farm or whatever. I've gone slightly off track here now. Not surprised to anyone who watches the channel. But yeah, they'll turn around on the vlogs and things. I'm not digging any vloggers out, I'm just saying it seems to be a thing. You know, the people here are amazing. The people here are wonderful. That's why they've come to the Philippines. The people here are nice. The people here are very friendly and polite. But they're also very insular. You're not going to have, I would suggest, many close Filipino friends. You might have a few, you might have a coffee with, you say hello to, you chat or whatever, but they're quite shy or insular in terms of, you know, you don't see many Western people out with groups of Filipinos outside of their family. Yes, if you marry a girl or you've got a girlfriend or whatever, you will probably end up socialising with her sisters and her immediate family, etc. But, you know, you're not, if you're a single guy and you come over here, don't expect to have a large circle of Filipino friends. Now, I had a large circle of Filipino friends over in Siquijor, but I was foolish. I didn't realise it at the time, but most of them were after me for the money and the drinks and taking them out or whatever, you know. Well, you learn your lessons. I don't begrudge any of them that. I had some good nights out. But, you know, if you're not going to put your hand in your pocket, unless you're part of some church group or something like that, you know, and you're mixing with Filipinos in your congregation, you're not going to have a large circle of Filipino friends. That's the reality. And sadly, when you talk to expats out, the average expat you will meet when you're out friends in your circle of friends do not have a high opinion of Filipinos. Let's be honest. You know, I can't remember the time I've gone into a quiz night or a bar or whatever and you get talking to people in the breaks who said, oh, I love this country, the Filipino people are so marvellous and they're so great. You'll generally get them moaning about the service they've had here and the service there and why can't the people understand. You know, that is the reality of living in the Philippines. And I've no doubt the Filipinos will moan about the expats. And 99% of what they say is probably right. But the women, that's why most people come here. And that's why I'm making this video now, because it's important in the sense that some of those relationships will go fantastically well. Some of these people will find their life partner and have a fantastic life. And I know a few who are in amazing relationships. You know, they seem to be, you know, same as Ellen and I seem to be. A lot of people will say, you know, you've had well, you don't actually know how we live, you know, what our lives are like when we're not filming. And I don't know what these people's lives are like when they're not in public. But there are certainly a percentage of, a good percentage of the circles I move in, they seem very happy. They seem like good couples. No reason to doubt that they're not. So when I'm making this video, I'm not talking about anyone I know really, because the circles I move in are very, it's quite tight knit. You know, it revolves around quizzes and things, and you know, nationalities. Most of the people I socialise with are English, Americans, Australians. But as I've said, mentioned in other videos, there is a bigger community here. There's a huge percentage of the people in Dumaguete tend to be Americans who are married and do the coffee shop circuit and things like that. You know, you'll see them in the mornings dropping their kids off at school, but you never see them out, you know, in the evenings at places that I tend to go to. So I don't know them. How strong their relationships are, I do not know. But there's no reason why you can't come here if you put the effort in and have an incredibly rewarding relationship with your Filipino. But equally, there are some who come here and they get trapped in a relationship. Trapped in the sense that they're in the Philippines now. They've invested, they've bought property, they've done whatever. It would be very difficult, if possible, for them to go back to their home countries. They miss their home countries. But they don't want to admit that. So there's a tendency, there seems to me, for these people to big the Philippines up because they want to sell the idea that they're living the dream. And as I say, some of them will be, but I just want to keep it real on this channel. I don't want people to think that I am living the dream, and I don't want them to come here because they think my life's so great and they want to emulate it. You know what I mean? Because that is troublesome to me. But the reality is, the vast majority of people, and this is not just my viewpoint. I was out a couple of months ago talking to a friend who's been here about 6-7 years, and I asked him why he'd stayed in Dumaguete so long, and he was open about it. He said because of his wife. He said, and that's why that's why he said everyone's here. Everyone in Dumaguete is here for 2 reasons. They want a limited budget. It's not because Dumaguete is cheaper than, you know, other cities. He said it's the same everywhere you go. Some people will be here for the cost of living, but the vast majority will be here because of their partners. And some of them are happy with that and some of them aren't. And they are the bitter and twisted ones that you need to avoid. And he's right. Dumaguete is not really a place for a single guy. Outside of Manila and Cebu, or Angeles, never been to Angeles, but obviously Angeles is a destination for a certain type of guy looking for a certain kind of thing. Everyone I know is in relationships. Everyone is in relationships, or they're looking for relationships. Thinking about it now, I think I know only one or two guys who are single in my whole circle of friends, and they're single through choice because they're here. They like doing the Tinder. They like meeting as many women as possible, and fair play to them, nothing wrong with that. But they are the minority. Not the same in Thailand. Get a lot of single guys over there, not just in Pattaya or Phuket or wherever. There are a lot more single guys in Thailand who aren't looking for relationships the way people do over here. So when people make this place out to be amazing, consider their motives. As I say, some people will genuinely think it is. Some people will know it's not and be purposely portraying it to be better for views on their channel sometimes. I mean, because, you know, if you want to say something's fantastic, you're going to get views. If you want to say something's terrible, you know, you're going to get views. I tend not to do that, A, because I can't work out how to do it. My titles never get me views. And B, that's not what the channel's about. You know what I mean? The channel is about me finding something to do in my spare time and being honest about the Philippines. I never intend to make any money out of this channel. I mean, it's farcical. Some guy the other day said, let's be honest, you know, you're only doing the channel for the money. Oh God, mate, I make about, I don't know, between 75 and £100 a month out of the YouTube channel. How far is that going to go? I know, and the amount of hours, it's just, it's not a money making, it's not a money making thing. But there you go. And for some of them, it'll be what we call cognitive dissonance. I'm not going to go into what that means. Basically, they won't realise they're doing it. They're projecting. You know, they're trying to convince themselves it's a wonderful place, and then they're happy. Not intentionally trying to deceive you. They're just, you know, and there will be some who have had terrible lives elsewhere, and this is why they think the Philippines is so fantastic. And if they're one of those people who found their paradise, then great. But to me personally, it's no greater than a lot of the other countries I've been to or lived in. Now the final lot, and these are the ones I would suggest you've really got to watch. If you stayed this long, this was the point of the video. You will get some who have come here who are very unhappy. Very unhappy. They're in unhappy relationships. All their relationships have gone, and they're bitter and they're twisted. And these people won't let it lie. They will not let it lie. They will paint out the Philippines to be a terrible place. You can't trust this, you can't trust that, you have to pay an allowance for this, you know, you'll have to support the family, you'll have to, you know, just bitter and twisted. Bitter and twisted. You know, they'll make the vlogs, you know, oh, she took all his money and she did this, and single mothers are the worst, you know. Look, take what they say with a pinch of salt. You know, they're unhappy, their lives have not worked out the way they want to. Well, I'm sorry that, but you can tell they're unhappy because of the comments they put in on not just my video, other people's videos, you know, just right here. Because it's happened to them, they assume it will happen to everybody else. I would suggest that it's happened to them as much as it's the way they behaved as it is the way the Filipino behaved. But we're generalising now, and that's not the point of the video. So yeah, be careful, be careful. You know, don't sell up everything and move it. Come here first and see for yourself. The Philippines might be the place for you. It might not be. The reality is, it is a challenging country to live in many aspects. In other aspects, it's a great country to live in. You know, some of the challenging things might really bother you. To some people, they might be water off a duck's back. It depends how willing you are to embrace the challenges. But that's the reality of a place like Dumaguete. I'm going to make up a statistic now because 98% of statistics are made up on the spot. I'd say about 90% of the people that live in Dumaguete are here because of their partners. You know, they've ended up meeting people in Dumaguete and they've stayed. You know, or they've had an LDR and she comes from the, you know, Negros. That's the reality of it. It's not because they fell in love with Dumaguete because it's such a fantastic place. It's because of the women. And that's the reality. So anyone tells you that this place is awful and it's terrible and, you know, the women will do this and they'll rob you and they'll do this, you know, take it with a pinch of salt. That's happened to them. But as I say, they will be partly to blame, if not majorly to blame. The fact they're behaving the way now, the fact they can't move on and get other relationships, the fact they're still bitter and twisted. I'm not trying to upset anyone here, you know, I'll probably lose a few subscribers for that comment if they fall into that category, but okay, if I do, I do. You know, just because it worked out like that for them, does not mean it has to be like that for you. Equally, the people that tell you this place is heaven on earth and it's fantastic and, you know, there's nothing bad, take it with a pinch of salt. Take it with a pinch of salt. The people that say this place is more expensive and it's gonna cost more than this or whatever, you know, it depends entirely on your lifestyle. But, you know, do some research. You can look on the cost of living indexes. You know, you don't have to take anecdotal evidence on this. There's empirical evidence you can look at. You know, I've got no dog in this fight. You know, I'm not trying to convince people to move here. The reality is, since I've lived in the Philippines, my living costs have been between the $1,000 and $1,500 a month. And I do everything I want to do. And I'm happy. That's just what I spend. It's not a budget. So that's cheap. Whichever way you look at it, that's cheap. You know, there's not so many countries in the world that you could do that. And of those countries you could do that, how many of them would you want to live in? I mean, I've looked at the old cost of living indexes, and the only place that I've seen really that's cheaper than here that I would consider living in is Egypt, because I quite liked Egypt. I used to do a lot of scuba diving over there. I don't think Egypt would be for me long term, but when you look at the cheaper countries like India, not for me, Pakistan, not for me, you know, of those ones that are lower than the Philippines, I think Colombia might be lower. I think Colombia is probably on a level with the Philippines. I do like the idea of trying Colombia at some stage. But yeah, it's only other Egypt. So I mean, yeah, you know, there are not. The reality is there are not many cheaper countries in the world where you would want to live potentially that are cheaper than here. And you know, places like Bulgaria, Romania, they're very cheap places to live in the Philippines, in Europe. But even so, they're quite cheap places. I don't think you could go out and have the same meals and do the same things you can in the Philippines there. But I don't know. I don't live in Bulgaria. A friend of mine recently used to do the Kingswick. He's in Bulgaria now. He's enjoying it. I had some nice snowboarding holidays in Bulgaria. I used to go there quite a bit, but I got salmonella poisoning twice. Put me off, really. But there you go. So anyway, I have gone on, I have waffled. I'm just saying, you know, the message of this video is be realistic about why people move to the Philippines. Nothing wrong with the reasons, but I believe they are. And it's not just my viewpoint. You know, I have spoken, for when I think about making a video, I will ask a few of the people I know what their thoughts are on a certain thing, why the people, and they all, in the week before I decided to make this video, they all said, yeah. I said, why do you think people move to Dumaguete? And also because girlfriends and women, you know. That's the reality of it. That's why people come to the Philippines. The vast majority. Not all, but the vast majority. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, smash the like button. If you haven't subscribed, it made me very happy if you did. But whether you do, whether you don't, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, stay safe, be lucky.